My parents gave my sister a luxury villa and left me an empty parking lot. They thought I'd crawl away quietly, but what I did tore our family's legacy apart. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. My family has always been called the perfect REITs by outsiders. My mom Gloria is the type of woman who shows up at charity auctions with a razor-thin smile and a diamond ring big enough to make you forget whatever she's saying. My dad Howard heads up the finance department at some big insurance company. Always quiet. Always on time. Always standing one step behind my mom like his main job is being the backdrop to her perfection. And there's my sister Emily, who they call the pride of the family, local magazine cover model at just 17. Graduated with a marketing degree without ever working a day in her life. By 25, she already owned 2 rental properties, thanks to mom and dad's investment help, plus an Instagram account with thousands of followers obsessed with her refined lifestyle. Me, I'm different. My name is Logan Reed, the youngest daughter, 27 years old. Graduated with an automotive engineering degree, work full-time at a small machine shop outside town, constantly getting grease stains on my shirts, and don't have a single photo pretty enough for my mom to post on Facebook. They never yell at me. They never criticize me to my face. They just forget about me. At dinner, during holidays, in family photos, in future plans. Emily is the symbol. I'm the ink stain in their family meeting notebook. I learned how to change spark plugs when I was 15, and learned how to stay quiet once I figured out that, no matter if I fixed the whole world. They'd never call me their pride and joy. The family meeting that day was announced with the subject line, estate updates and asset adjustments between parties. I wasn't surprised when the location turned out to be the new mansion in Fairlake that mom and dad had just finished transferring into Emily's name. The place looked like something straight out of a real estate ad, floor-to-ceiling windows, a koi pond, and a row of decorative palm trees planted in perfect golden ratio proportions. Emily stepped out of her white Range Rover in a beige linen dress with that so incredibly grateful smile. I showed up later in my oil-stained jacket. Having just left the shop after working late, my mom walked out, raising her wine glass like she was hosting some gala event. "We want to make this fair," she said. "Everyone's going to get their share. Emily has that business foundation. So this mansion will help her develop her personal brand." I stayed quiet. Then she pulled a folder from her purse, along with a thin red deed book, and tossed them on the table like an appetizer. "As for you, Logan, mom and dad found some real estate to put in your name. Lot Thentweechie 7 at Eden Court, the parking lot behind the shopping center. It's not big, but it's private. You could do something with it, who knows?" At least she laughed lightly. "It's got an awning for shade, just in case you ever don't have a place to stay. Well, you could always sleep under there." Nobody laughed, just the sound of wind hitting the big windows and the ice clinking in Dad's wine glass. Emily didn't say anything, but I caught her glancing at me, a look that was half pity, half satisfaction. I grabbed the folder, stuffed it in my jacket pocket, turned around and walked out. I don't know what they were thinking, but I remember every single word, and that very place, that parking lot they saw as scrap property, would be the starting point. Nobody had any idea that it was hiding a piece of truth big enough to burn down that whole mansion Emily was living in. 3 days after the asset distribution meeting, I went back to Eden Court, the run-down shopping center sitting off Highway 19. I parked next to a computer store that had been closed since COVID. The parking lot was empty except for some old oil stains, a flickering street light, and a trash can knocked over by the wine sitting between 2 faded painted lines. Not a soul around. I walked over to Lot Thentweechie 7. The old metal sign was rusted and missing a corner. Under the sign, a cracked concrete slab exposed the gravel underneath. I sat down, put my hand on the cold cement. It felt like I was touching the leftover scraps of a family dream that had died long ago. I started wondering, why did they keep this empty lot so carefully? If they looked down on me this much, why not just leave me with nothing? Or was there something about this parking lot they didn't want outsiders to discover? I looked around. The parking lot had a small utility room sitting off by itself in the far corner, the kind of place where maintenance guys keep lighting and security camera systems. The door was locked, but the lock was rusty and the faded sign read "Employees only, last update 2016. I reached into my pocket, felt the old key cane that used to be Grandpa's, key number 3, brass colored. I remembered using it to open the old storage shed back when he was still alive. I tried it in the lock. Click clack, the door popped open. Dust, smell of rotting paper, a moldy green wooden desk, a metal filing cabinet, a folded A3 electrical diagram, and on the wall was a handwritten list of lot owners yellowed with age. Thentweechie 7. Logan Reed. Thentweechie 6 vacant. Thentweechie 5 Emily Reed. Note, temporarily managed per 2013 will. Keep main records in safe under utility desk. My heart skipped a beat. What was Thentweechie 5, and why did Emily have anything to do with this parking lot? I crouched down and gently pulled the rotting wood panel under the desk. There was a dry crack sound, and a small square metal door appeared, covered in dust, an old-style safe. No fingerprint scanner, no electronics, just a 3-number mechanical dial with the black paint worn off. I bit my lip. 3-number combination. No clues anywhere? I turned on my phone's flashlight and shined it on the dial face. There were some unusual wear marks on the numbers 40 and 33 spots that lined up on all 3 rings. 403. I took a breath and turned the dial. 4 left, 0 right, 3 left. Click. The safe door popped open slightly, dust falling from the edges. Inside was an old file folder, wrapped in a plastic bag. Asset redistribution, Logan Reed, Eden Court, 2013. Will copy on file. I opened it up. A scanned handwritten document from my grandfather Samuel Reed. Strong, clear handwriting. It clearly stated, grant to granddaughter Logan full ownership of 3 lots, then Tweechy 5, then Tweechy 6, then Tweechy 7, to be used as foundation for personal service development or reinvestment within 15 years of my death. A note in the margin in blue pen: temporarily give Emily custody of then Tweechy 5. Then Tweechy 6 so as not to distract Logan from her studies, to be transferred back after college. I went dead silent. They had kept this from me for an entire decade. It wasn't just the empty lot, the Tweechy 7. I was supposed to own all 3 lots in prime location behind the shopping center. An area that was now being rezoned as a mini-city development, and more than that, I was supposed to know about it, sign for it, make the decisions, not have someone else hold it for me. My hands started shaking as I held the papers. My mother's signature appeared under the line: approval for temporary coordination legal representative for Logan Reed Minor. I was 18 that year. They had forged the paperwork and used me as just a name to handle the bureaucracy. That night, I didn't call Mom, didn't call Dad either. I called Emily directly. For the first time in years, I made the first move. You freed? I asked. My voice so flat I didn't even recognize it myself. Logan. Emily hesitated. What's going on? I need to see you, just us. About the parking lot. 2 seconds of silence. Fair enough, she said. Tomorrow 10 a.m. The Terrace coffee shop. The Terrace was where Emily met with her Instagram partners. Stylists, people in her same social circle. I walked in wearing my oil-stained t-shirt and dust-covered work boots. She was sitting by the window in a white jumpsuit. Blonde hair curled in waves like a showroom doll. I dropped the file folder on the table. Then Tweechy 5, then Tweechy 6, they were supposed to be mine. Grandpa wrote it out clearly. You've been holding them for 10 years. Emily didn't touch the folder, just looked at me. A smirk appeared, light but sharp as a razor blade. Logan, you still haven't given up this fantasy, have you? I gritted my teeth. I have Grandpa's signature. I have documentation. I even have Mom's handwriting. And you think some dusty piece of paper from a maintenance room at Eden Court has any legal value? She laughed out loud. Do you have any idea what Mom and Dad had to go through to save that area when Grandpa died? They put their names on the line to help you. And you go fix cars and live in some fantasy that you got betrayed. I clenched my hands. They lied to me, and you're keeping something that isn't yours. Emily tilted her head. Wrong, they held it for you. And I developed it. And you? What do you have besides some old paperwork and an empty parking lot? I stood up. The file folder was still sitting there. She never even touched it. But in Emily's eyes, I saw a flash of panic, because I knew, and for the first time, I wasn't staying quiet anymore. That evening, I went to my auto shop after hours, but not to fix cars. I sat in the small office, harsh white LED light shining on the old computer screen I used to look up technical diagrams. The internal network at Eden Court had been deteriorating for a while. But thanks to an old friend in the city's property management department, I got a temporary account with level 3 access enough to look up non-public land registration data. I entered the property codes, Tweechy 5, Tweechy 6, Tweechy 7. The results came back: Tweechy 5, Emily Reed. Name transferred 2016, Certificate of Internal Transfer Authorization, signed by Representative Gloria Reed, mother, Tweechy 6 Reed Family Trust, beneficiary and clear, managed by Howard Reed, Tweechy 7 Logan Reed. Last updated 2 weeks ago, marked as gifted to individual. No conditions attached. I swallowed hard. I had never signed any gift papers. I also didn't remember ever authorizing my mother to transfer on my behalf. In 2016, I was working full-time in Oklahoma, and now I could see my name had been removed from 2-3 of the assets that were originally willed to me. I opened the attached file details section, a blurry poor scan quality, but still readable. Logan Reed unavailable for direct contact, per family confirmation. Short-term authorization for Gloria Reed to act as signing representative. Signature Gloria Reed. Certificate Form C internal family authorization, no independent verification required. Form C. This was only used when the beneficiary was absent long-term or lacked legal capacity. I suddenly remembered in 2016, I'd had a minor motorcycle accident and was hospitalized for 3 days. Mom flew out to take care of me and held onto my entire wallet, phone and all my documents the whole time. I felt a chill run down my spine. I was used to the smell of burning engines, the screech of fan belts, and digging through messy piles to find problems. Checking def metadata wasn't much different. If you knew where to look, everything would tell the truth. I opened the source information for the authorization document that my mom used to sign on my behalf. It was uploaded to the system on September 11, 2016 at 3:42 am. Username admin 278. Internal IP address logged in from private office hurried network. Pride Howard Reed, my dad. But the weird thing was the upload time 3 am. I remembered clearly. That day I was still in the hospital with my leg in a cast. My dad wasn't there. It was my mom who stayed with me. They said he was away on business, but the metadata showed he was the one who logged into the system and uploaded the file. I kept following the IP trail but access was blocked. I tried again, a message popped up, access denied, attempt logged. A minute later, I got a text, unknown number. Just showed no caller ID. I opened it, just one line, Logan, stop. There are things you shouldn't dig up. I went silent. I hadn't talked to anyone about this, hadn't shared the data with anybody, just me in the small office of my auto shop poking around in family data. Someone was watching, or there was a monitoring backdoor attached to the account I was using. I immediately unplugged the Ethernet cable, sat in the darkness. In less than 3 days, I had found out I'd been stripped of 2 lots, discovered forged signatures, traced metadata back to my dad, and gotten warned off. I felt like there was something deeper than just inheritance issues, something my family had buried before my grandfather even died. The next morning, I went back to Eden Court. It was drizzling steadily. Raindrops falling rhythmically on the cracked concrete pavement, creating a strangely familiar sound. I wasn't there to check paperwork. I came because something felt off. I stood at lot Thentweechy 5 for a long time, then went back to the utility room where I'd found the first set of files. While I was fumbling around checking the walls, a man's voice called out behind me, "Nobody's used this place since 2017. You the new renter?" I turned around. An old man with a gray beard, wearing a worn maintenance jacket, holding a floor mop. His eyes weren't surprised, just too tired. "I'm Logan Reed," I said, "Samuel Reed's granddaughter." The man froze. "Logan, Jesus, I thought they gave everything to your sister already." I looked at him. "Yours, Harry, I used to watch over this place when old Sam was alive. Now I work part-time cleaning, keeping an eye on things." I nodded. "Do you know what happened with these lots?" Harry looked around, then pulled me inside the utility room and closed the door. "Old Sam once told me, if Logan comes back, tell her to check the lower level of Thentweechy 5. He didn't trust anyone else to keep that thing safe." I went numb. "Lower level?" Harry nodded. "Thentweechy 5 is the only lot with a semi-underground system, designed from the Cold War era, used as a shelter storage, later converted into personal data storage. Only old Sam and one other person knew how to open it." I felt my chest pounding wildly. "Do you know how to open it?" Harry shook his head. "No, but I know where the bunker door is. It's under the steel plate at the end of the lot, has the first symbol, stands for Reed Family Holdings." I grabbed the door handle. "Thank you, but before I left," he said quietly, "be careful with Howard. There are things he's been hiding since before Sam Reed died." I went back to lot Thentweechy 5 in the late afternoon, when the sunlight was starting to turn that burning copper color behind the old shopping center buildings. The rain had stopped, but the concrete was still wet. I walked slowly, step by step, along the edge of the barrier, carefully observing every crack, every brick joint, and then I saw it. A very small engraving, not painted, not printed, but etched into the steel. At the square corner at the end of the parking lot, RFH, Reed Family Holdings. Those 3 letters weren't unfamiliar. When I was little, Grandpa used to sign like that on envelopes or his notes. He used to joke, "This is a code. Anyone who understands it will have the key to finding justice again." Back then I thought he was telling fairy tales. Now, I was starting to understand. I crouched down and shined my flashlight directly on the surface. The first symbol was in the middle of a square steel plate, Wennixon meter, with welded edges all around. The bottom edge had a very thin groove just wide enough to insert something. I remembered key number 3, the one that had opened the utility room door. I pulled it out and slid it into the groove. Click, the whole steel plate vibrated slightly. A soft pop sound like air being sucked in, then a recessed door opened up from the concrete floor. Below was a narrow staircase, sloping downward, dim light filtering through technical gaps. I stood there, my heart pounding wildly. In that darkness, I didn't know what I would find: another safe, a hard drive, or the answer to why my entire family had to reconstruct reality just to remove me from the perfect Reed picture. I stepped down, each step feeling heavy as lead. The underground space was cold and dry. The smell of old metal and rotting paper wafted up. At the end of the hallway, there was a small steel door with a Nello-4 paper taped to it. "Logan, if you found this place, it means you've started to see, and this time, you can't turn away." Handwriting on my grandfather's. I opened the steel door. Inside wasn't big, only about 5 square meters, but it was completely soundproof. A pale yellow fluorescent bulb flickered on when I stepped in. The room contained 3 things: a steel filing cabinet, a steel desk with a microfilm projector, and a thick brown envelope placed right in the middle of the desk, with handwritten text taped on top: "Only open if you are Logan, not anyone else." I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, along with a color real estate map, old, but every line was clear. I read the letter first. "Logan, if you're reading this, it means they kept you from the part that Grandpa left for you. Grandpa knew from the beginning. And Grandpa chose not to give it to you directly, because he was afraid they'd do everything they could to take it away. Emily will be spoiled because she's like your mother, knows how to say what people want to hear. But you're the only one in this house who can see through the glossy paint job. You'll be the only one who won't sell yourself out to maintain the image. And that's why Grandpa chose you. The Thentweechy 5 Thentweechy 7 strip isn't just 3 parking lots. Underneath is the old utility pipeline that connects to the Eden Extension warehouse, what's now being zoned as the new commercial district. If they get control of that connection, they'll use it to force everyone else to sell back the whole cluster. But if you can keep that underground connection, they won't be able to legitimize all of Eden Court. Keep this part, because this isn't just property. It's leverage. Grandpa trusts you, and Grandpa apologizes for letting you grow up in silence. But from now on, you don't need anyone's permission to exist. I sat in silence for a long time. Not because I was shocked, but because for the first time, someone in the family trusted me enough to hand over an ace in the hole. I picked up the map. On it was a diagram of pipelines, underground cable systems, and even secondary access routes connecting Eden Court to the Eden Extension area, where Emily and my dad were negotiating a real estate deal worth $20 million. And me, the one abandoned with a parking lot, was holding the final key piece that could make everything collapse. I left the basement with the map, handwritten letter, and a USB drive with scanned documents. The first thing I did was call Diana, my rare lawyer friend from college, who now worked at a small firm specializing in civil disputes. I'd been fixing her car for the first 2 years after graduation. Diana wasn't the type to get easily swayed. She once sued a bank for refusing to refund a transaction error, just because the procedures weren't correct. I sent her the scanned photos, the map, and the handwritten letter. Diana replied immediately, "Logan, this is bigger than I thought. If these lots are part of the Eden Extension Development Corridor, your strategic value is at least $5 million. I asked, "Is there a way to protect the evidence?" She said, "Let me handle it. For now, don't go public, don't post anything. Don't send emails, they'll react." I agreed. But the next morning, I called Diana back. The phone rang 3 times, then went to voicemail. I left a message, "Diana, I need you to confirm you downloaded and backed up the files. This isn't something to mess around with." No response. That same afternoon, I went to her office. The receptionist said Ms. Diana has taken temporary leave for health reasons. She's not seeing clients. I felt something slipping out of my grasp. I rushed home and checked the hard drive where I'd saved the original files. Empty. The folder was gone. The partition had been overwritten. I checked the memory card in my camera, where I'd photographed the paper map. Corrupted files. Someone had wiped everything clean. I looked around my small apartment. No signs of break-in. Nothing was broken, but the backup drive had somehow slipped one MAC out of the S port. I lived here alone. That night, I went online to check the status of the Eden Extension project. On the real estate developer's main page was a new article, "Forged Document Dispute Within Reed Family," with a photo of Logan Reed, me, cropped from old Facebook posts. Along with the caption, "A family member with a history of anxiety disorders is spreading false information to sabotage the project." I had never been diagnosed with anything. I'd only gone to 1 counseling session in college because I was stressed about losing a job. But they were building a new portrait, a disturbed child, lost and dangerous to the family reputation. I woke up Monday morning in an apartment with no Wi-Fi. The modem just blinked red. I pulled out my phone, turned on mobile data, no signal. I switched to my computer, tried to log into email, account temporarily locked due to suspicious activity. I opened my bank account under source verification, temporarily frozen. I sat straight up, my pulse pounding in my ears. In less than 48 hours, I'd been turned into someone untrustworthy, financially powerless, unable to communicate, unable to fight back. And they did it without laying a finger on me. I went back to the auto shop, the place I thought was safe. The roll-up door was broken open. Inside, the computer had its hard drive removed. Nothing was stolen, except the evidence. I collapsed onto the concrete floor. Grandpa's words echoed back, "If you found this place, it means you've started to see, and this time, you can't turn away." I went back to Eden Court. This time I didn't go straight to the utility room. I walked right into the middle of lot 7, the empty parking lot they thought I'd throw away. I stared down at the old concrete floor. I remembered, years ago Grandpa had brought me here when I was just 12. He pointed to a small crack in the corner of the parking lot. "Logan, sometimes the most valuable things are buried under rotting concrete. Remember, when you have no one left to trust, try knocking on the floor." I crouched down. I tapped lightly with my hand. 1 A 2 A 3, hollow sound, then E, metal. I brushed away the dust layer and found a thin tile panel that had been sealed over with concrete around the edges. I used a screwdriver tip to pry gently. The tile popped up. Underneath was a sealed metal box. Engraved on it, "Samuel Reed, final backup, not to be trusted with anyone else." I clutched the box to my chest, hands shaking. No internet, no money, no friends. But I had the one thing they couldn't erase, the final physical evidence. I went back to the auto shop, secured the back door with chains and double locks, cut the power, no internet, just a flashlight, a box cutter, and the sealed box Grandpa left behind. It took almost 10 minutes to pry off the welded steel edges. Inside was a cassette tape, a set of papers wrapped in plastic, and a thin notebook leather cover. Embossed notes, RFH only. I opened the cassette tape first. I pulled out the old cassette player I used to listen to technical tapes. It took 2 tries flipping the tape before sound started coming through static. But clear. "Logan, if you're hearing this tape, it means you didn't stay silent like the rest of the family." My grandfather's voice, deep hoarse, like he was recording in the middle of the night. In 2005, after your grandmother died, your mother and Howard came to see me. They wanted to separate Emily from the asset system, avoid being controlled by the old will. They proposed a deal. I would transfer management of the 3 Eden Court lots to Gloria, and in exchange, they'd keep quiet about Howard's insurance company laundering money through charity funds. I refused. I went dead silent. In 2007, they came back, this time, with Emily. The girl brought draft-forged papers in Logan's name, but signed by Gloria. They threatened to use it to temporarily transfer ownership if I continued to resist. I knew if I left you in the main asset system, you'd get trapped in it too, so I secretly split lots, then Tweechy 5, then Tweechy 7 just for you, cut them off from the link system, and created the backup data bunker in case they erased the originals. I started crying. My hands shaking, and not because I was betrayed but because I used to think they just hated me. Turns out, they feared me, because I was the only child not involved in the conspiracy. I opened the notebook. Inside was a log recording every asset change from 2003-2014. Clear notes of the day Gloria used forged authorization papers to change ownership, the day Howard transferred control of the Reed Family Trust to a shell company in Belize. There was a final note at the end of the book, handwritten in purple ink: if one day Logan can't speak up, then the room under Thuntweechy 5 will speak for her. No one can deny this tape. I sat in the garage, the cassette tape still spinning in the player. Every time Grandpa's voice came through was another knife cutting through the family mask I used to believe was real. I backed up everything: audio recording converted to WAV file, saved on 3 USB drives, diary scanned completely, saved as DEF, printed 2 copies, underground map photographed each section, pieced together, time-stamped it and location marked. I sent 1 set through internal mail to City Resource Department, signed with my real name. The second set sent to independent local newspaper, specializing in real estate investigations. The third set I hid in the safe at the shop, under the old fuse box tray. I knew once the documents were opened, my family wouldn't be able to silence me anymore with their quiet manipulation tricks like before. But I didn't anticipate how fast their counterattack would be. That afternoon, a courier in official uniform walked up. In his hand was an envelope from county court, red seal stamped mandatory competency and mental health evaluation notice, her urgent request from family representative unit. I froze. The petition was filed by Howard Reed and Gloria Reed, stated reasons: severe paranoid behavior, threat to property safety, history of anxiety, refuses family contact, and spreads false information. Attached was an appointment with court-appointed psychiatrist within 72 hours. If no show arrest warrant may be executed. They weren't trying to suppress the story anymore, they were erasing me from reality. I looked at the paper. Every line seemed pre-written in a script they'd prepared long ago. I called the court's number to verify the case. Yes, the case is real. Petition filed 3 days ago, with 3 corroborating statements from family members: Emily Reed, Gloria Reed, and Howard Reed. They'd calculated everything in advance. I sat in silence, hand resting on the map Grandpa left behind. Then I opened my phone, dialed a reporter Diana once mentioned, Lexi Monroe, investigative journalist who exposed the nursing home fraud last year. When the woman's voice came through, I only said one sentence: I have documents proving a corporation is laundering money through redevelopment land, but my family is trying to have me committed before I can submit the evidence. Lexi was quiet for 2 seconds. Then said, send me the address, I'm coming right now. Lexi Monroe arrived at 8:04 p.m., right on time to the minute. She wore a khaki jacket, hair pulled back high, carrying a black backpack and a small camera clipped to her hip. No assistant reporter, no crew. Just her and eyes that had seen the truth in too many rotten forms. I invited her to the back of the auto shop, the small room where I hid the evidence box. Lexi didn't ask many questions. She set the camera on the table, turned on record mode. Where do we start? I asked. Right when they gave you that parking lot, she replied. And from there, show me just how much they underestimated you. I told her, layer by layer, from Emily's mansion, to the files in the utility room, to the basement under lot Tintweechy 5, to the audio recording. Grandpa's diary, the technical map connecting Eden Extension. She didn't interrupt me once. When I put the cassette in the player and Grandpa's voice came through, they threatened to use Logan's name to transfer assets if I continued to resist. Lexi gently took hold of my wrist. Not squeezing, just reassuring. After nearly 40 minutes, she turned off the camera. Logan, you don't just have evidence, you have a story. And we're not going to let it die in silence. I nodded. For the first time in months, I felt not alone. She was copying the video to a memory card when my phone rang. A hotline number. I hesitantly answered. Ms. Logan Reed, we're calling from County Civil Support Services. Per court order, you're required to report for psychiatric evaluation within the next 12 hours, or a forced custody warrant will be issued. Lexi heard it. She immediately started recording the end of the call. That's them, I said quietly. I know. Lexi looked at me. Do you have anywhere safe? I laughed. Only thing left, the parking lot they gave me. Lexi nodded. Good. From now on, it becomes independent press territory. If they step foot in there, There'll be cameras waiting. They came the next morning. No sirens, no handcuffs, but it was a regional mental health support center van, government plates, with 2 staff in white coats and a police officer escort. I didn't resist. I just asked, "Can I bring my notebook?" The staff member nodded. "No electronics, but personal papers are fine." I stuffed a copy of Grandpa's letter into the thin notebook, along with a few diary pages, then stepped out. Before getting in the van, I turned back to look at Lexi. She was sitting in her silver gray hatchback, hand resting on the camera like a promise. "We went live at 5 a.m. You just need to survive today." They took me to Westridge Institute intake ward, a place that had been investigated for lack of transparency and management but was quietly swept under the rug. I was held in an isolation room for 6 hours. No phone, no clock, just one-way glass and ceiling cameras watching. I used a borrowed pen to redraw Grandpa's land diagram on medical forms. Every pipeline, every connection point. I reminded myself the piece of land they thought was worthless was actually the hook holding the entire system together. By afternoon, the door opened. A gray-haired doctor walked in, along with a nurse. He set down a file folder, face expressionless, voice steady and low. "Seamson, today is a special day." I looked up. "Do you know the video, Samuel Reed's final words, hit 2 million views in 3 hours? And apparently, Resource Department just announced a temporary halt to the entire Eden Extension project." I said nothing, just gripped my notebook tighter. He nodded. "You have a phone call. County Press Office requesting identity verification to support opening an official investigation." I stood up. The nurse opened the door. No one stopped me. I walked out into the hallway, sunlight streaming through the windows for the first time that day, and I realized I was no longer the one being evaluated. I was the one making the whole city reconsider what they used to believe was true. The next day, I stood in the middle of City Press Center, a place once used to announce pandemic policies, now reserved for a personal investigation. In front of me were 3 microphones with logos from the 3 largest regional newspapers. Behind me were lawyers representing the Resource Department and local court representatives. I stood straight. In my hand was Grandpa's notebook, the original purple ink. I didn't need to look at it anymore. I knew every line by heart. The first reporter asked Logan Reed, "Do you have evidence that your family deliberately manipulated land ownership to legitimize a money laundering scheme?" I answered, clear as day, "Not my family, but a group of people with the Reed name, willing to destroy an entire legacy to maintain a perfect image." I presented the Eden Court Eden Extension connection diagram, projected the map from the original estate, played the excerpt from Grandpa's recording. They threatened to use Logan's name to transfer assets if I continued to resist. No one spoke for 30 seconds after that. The city's legal representative spoke up, based on documents provided by Ms. Logan Reed. "We are officially suspending all property transactions related to the Reed Family Trust. We are also opening investigations into signature forgery, misuse of internal documents, and illegal transfers." I left the podium in silence, but the sound of cameras, reporters' phone typing rose up like endless rain. When I stepped out of the press hall, a white Mercedes pulled up. The person who got out was Emily. No hat, no smile, no live street, no lipstick, just Emily Bear. Exhausted and scared, she walked closer. I stood still. Emily looked at me. Her eyes were bloodshot, no tears falling, but her face had no protective layers left. "Logan, I didn't think you would go this far," I replied, voice low. "And did you ever think about when Grandpa took you to lessons, then left me sitting in the parking lot, waiting 3 hours in the middle of winter?" Emily's throat tightened. I continued, "You took everything because you thought I didn't know how to keep it. But really, you never understood the value of anything." She turned away. Didn't argue back, didn't get angry, because she knew this round, they had lost. 2 days after the press conference, Channel 8 announced they would exclusively broadcast a live interview with Gloria Reed, former honorary chairman of the Women's Prosperity Fund, my mother, and the person who signed forged authorization papers to steal assets from me. I wasn't planning to watch. I thought there was nothing left to hear. But Lexi called me before it aired. "Watch it. You should witness how they strangle themselves with the thing they always thought was their weapon image." The screen came on television. My mother looked as beautiful as always, blue silk dress, white pearl necklace, just enough moisture in her eyes, voice soft as velvet. The host opened with, "Mrs. Reed, what would you like to say to the public, especially to your daughter, after everything that's happening?" She looked into the camera for a long time, then she said, "I love that child. But Logan has always been different. She doesn't fit the structure our family has maintained for generations." My blood went cold. "We don't hate her, we just worry about her. Logan always has a tendency to fantasize, becomes obsessed with justice, and it easily trusts bad people." The host followed up, "Do you deny using forged authorization papers?" She deflected, "I don't remember clearly. We handled a lot of paperwork that year. There might have been errors, but we always did what was best for the family." And then she said the final line, "She can keep that parking lot. We won't argue about it. But the entire estate and structure fundamentally isn't for people who don't know how to develop themselves." Social media exploded. Within 3 hours of the interview, #Logan deserves better hit one on regional Twitter. A journalist commented Gloria Reed just established how not to handle a family crisis for all of America. The Property Investigation Board sent urgent subpoenas for all 3 Reed family members for public testimony. I got the news while cleaning up the auto shop office, sitting on an old oil drum lid. I rewatched the interview clip, and for the first time in my life, I saw it, my mother trembling, not because she was worried about me, but because she was afraid of losing control. I closed the laptop, looked out at the Eden Court parking lot, where they thought was my ending. Now it was where everything began again. The courtroom didn't look like the movies. Nobody was shouting, nobody was banging tables, just a long row of walnut tables. Old leather chairs, 3 microphones placed in front, one for me, one for the court representative, and one for the Reed family side. My mother arrived first, hair neatly tied back, ash gray suit dress, face pale despite careful makeup. My father followed, silent as always. Except this time, he didn't walk behind Mom. He walked beside her, like 2 people sitting on the same judgment seat, judging themselves. Emily came last, white button-down shirt, no lipstick, no dark sunglasses. She glanced at me for the first time without contempt. Without pity, just acceptance. The city's legal representative presented, "We have verified that the authorization documents used to transfer property ownership belonging to Logan Reed are invalid. The signatures don't match. The timing occurred when Ms. Logan was receiving medical treatment and not mentally alert." He presented handwriting comparisons, timestamps, images extracted from hospital cameras. My mother bowed her head. "We also confirm that Mr. Samuel Reed's documents are original and unedited, stored in the secure bunker under Eden Court, and have been validated by 2 independent forensic experts." The lawyer's voice was steady, without anger, just the sound of the old order collapsing layer by layer. When it was my turn to speak, I only said a short piece. "I'm not here to make them apologize. I'm here to prove I know exactly who I am, and that parking lot, the place they thought was something to throw away, became the foundation for all of today's justice." I paused, looked at my mother. She looked up, eyes wet. No longer performing, I looked over at Emily. "You can keep the mansion, I'll keep the cornerstone. And this time, I'm not leaving." She pressed her lips together. Didn't argue back, and I knew this battle was no longer about paperwork. It was about something they had never been able to define in their entire lives. I'm someone who doesn't stay silent. And they no longer have the right to write the rest of the story. 3 months after the hearing, I regained full legal ownership of lots Thentweechie 5, Thentweechie 7, along with the technical access route to the old basement where Grandpa had built the backup security system. The verdict wasn't long. No prison, no chains, just complete separation between me and what they called the Reed family. I didn't force them to apologize. I also didn't go collect the mansion keys from Emily as some symbolic handover. I kept Eden Court, that rotting parking lot. Didn't sell, didn't negotiate, and turned it into something I always needed, but never had. Eden Court Nonprofit Community Support Center. I converted the utility room into a free legal consultation office for young people pushed out of inheritance rights by their families. The old basement where the map was once hidden was reinforced, ventilated, and became a storage room for cases of people rejected from land ownership systems. The parking lot repainted every space, installed solar lights, and opened at night as temporary shelter for women with nowhere to go. Each parking space had a small sign, "We believe you're not leftover." My mother stopped appearing in public. She disappeared from charity events, withdrew from upper-class ladies' meetings. My father stopped texting. The last time I saw him was in the news, when he sold the insurance company at half price due to investigation involvement. Emily, she opened a personal brand renewal studio in another state. I heard she's trying to rebuild her reputation by talking about a pressured childhood. I don't hate them. I just no longer have to chase after people who never saw me as real. On an autumn evening, I sat on the concrete floor of Thentweechie 7, where the crack Grandpa showed me when I was 12 used to be. In my hands was the old leather notebook. I had written on the last page, "Grandpa, I didn't fix the system, I built a new one, but I kept every trace you left behind. Because justice isn't revenge, it's a place where others no longer have to be forced into silence like I once was." Light breeze, the smell of car oil drifting from the shop across the street. I no longer dream about mansions, I have a parking lot and freedom. And for the first time in my life, I'm the one holding the keys. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.